What's good, y'all? Welcome back to 352 Sports Talk. As you can tell, it's just me. You got me looking at this ugly mug for the next, I don't even know how long I got you for, but you'll see in the time right there. Before we get too deep, come on, like and subscribe. Check out Anchor, you know what I mean? The best place to post all your podcast needs. Posted to all major streaming services. Quick and easy to use. Shout out Anchor. Like and subscribe, man. Helps us out, supports us. That's just an issue we have. We have a lot of people that watch and then not a lot of people that like and subscribe. It helps us out, puts us in the algorithm. But, like I said, welcome to the 352 Sports Talk podcast. It is just me today, Jamari, aka 352 Pharaoh, aka your girl's favorite nigga to text, aka your auntie's favorite nigga to text, aka I'm that nigga. No, what's it called? Today it's just me. I don't got my co-host today with me. No Greg, no Eddie. Everybody's caught up with finals. Everybody's caught up with testing. Me, I'm just working hard like a slave in the sun and making music. But other than that, so the NBA released the all-decade NBA list, right? Meaning the best players, like the all-NBA list that they do every year, but for the decade. So from, and listen closely, you Kobe Bryant fans, from 2009, the 2009-10 season to the 2018-19 season. That's what we're talking about. That time period. Not 1998, not 01, not 02. 09 to 2010 to 2018-2019 season. That's it. They released the best players from that decade, the all-decade NBA team 1, 2, and 3, right? The list it was pretty controversial in a few ways. Okay, I remember most of them, but I just want to make sure I get all of them right because I know exactly who I want to talk about, and y'all probably already know who I want to talk about too. But let me start it off. First team. Stephen Curry at the 1, James Harden at the 2, LeBron James at the 3, Kevin Durant at the 4, Kawhi Leonard, right? That's the first team. Backcourt players, 3 frontcourt players, right? That's important. Remember that. Just 2. So if you wanted to bump one of the players up and out, it would have to be guard for a guard or forward for a forward. You can't just swap forward for a guard. It doesn't work like that. 2 guards, 3 forwards. Stephen Curry, James Harden, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard. That's the first team. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. I mean, there's not really much argument there. All of these players won rings in the past decade, were dominant players, top 5 players. The only argument I heard people say, James Harden doesn't deserve it. He has an MVP, went to the Western Conference Finals how many times in a row, and just to get beat by the greatest team we've ever seen. So I don't count that as an indictment against him. Averaged 36 points in the regular season, scored 30 points on every single team in the NBA last season, 50-point triple-doubles here and there and everywhere, 60-point triple-double here. He's just a beast. Not even going to argue that with you guys over why James Harden deserves to be an all-decade first team. All-NBA decade second team. Chris Paul at the 1, Russell Westbrook at the 2, Anthony Davis at the 3, Blake Griffin, Carmelo Anthony. It's 3 forward. So Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin, Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony on the second team. People were upset about that. Let me read the third team and then explain to you why people were upset about it. Third team. Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Paul George, Marcus Aldridge, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. People are arguing that Carmelo Anthony doesn't deserve to be all-decade second team. People are arguing that Blake Griffin doesn't deserve to be all-NBA second team. People are arguing that Chris Paul doesn't deserve all-NBA second team, nor Russell Westbrook. Everybody except Anthony Davis, people are upset about. They say D. Wade should be up there. Kobe Bryant should be up there. Giannis shouldn't be there. Kyrie should be in Giannis' place. Where's Kyrie? Paul George should be up there. And why is LaMarcus Aldridge there? We can find somebody else. Okay. Let's go to the second team, and I'll explain to you stupid bitches why every single one of these players deserves to be in that spot. Russell Westbrook, average triple-double, MVP player, been to the Western Conference Finals twice, went to the finals in his third year in 2011. One of the most electric players of the decade. one of the most dominant point guards of the decade. In a guard heavy game, he still managed to stand out and be one of the best guards in the game. People have a lot of recency bias, meaning they only look at what's happened in the last 2 years. And even though in the last 2 years, Russell Westbrook has been averaging a triple-double, he's not shooting well, he's not winning. We can attest that to a lot of things. It can be his team wasn't that good. It can be he didn't have the help or whatever. What have you. At the end of the day, you look at the stats. That is what all NBA is about. It's not who we like the most. It's not necessarily about who wins the most championships, obviously. It's about who puts up the best stats. Period, point blank. So, there you go. Russell Westbrook deserves his spot. Chris Paul deserves his spot as an all-NBA second team. He's one of the greatest point guards the game has ever seen. And throughout 2010 to 2019, y'all forget, like, people just love to forget. Lob City? You forget how dirty Lob City was? Chris Paul doesn't get injured, they go to the finals. We all know that. It baffles me that they say, oh, Chris Paul doesn't deserve to be there. Blake Griffin doesn't deserve to be there. Chris Paul, let me read you these stats for the goddamn decade. For the decade, Chris Paul had 7 All-Star nominations, all NBA teams. He made 6 of them. He averaged 18 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and 10 assists per game. Are you kidding me? He almost averaged a double-double as a point guard, and with missing all these games because of his injuries and not even getting a chance to be in the postseason for long because of injury. He's an injury-plagued player, we know that, but while he's on the court, he's still one of the greatest players we've ever seen and has been a part of a lot of eras of basketball and stayed relevant at his age. We all know this. I don't know why you guys just decide to just shit on CP every time you want. You just can't do that. He was the second best player on a Western Conference finalist team for 2 years in a row. One year they had the Golden State Warriors down 3-2 going back home. And they choked it because Chris Paul was injured. We all know this. Chris Paul's there, it's a different series. They don't brick however many threes in a row. Moving on. I'm not even going to argue with you guys anymore. Chris Paul deserves to be all NBA second team. Blake Griffin doesn't deserve to be there. Blake Griffin is the second player ever to be an All-Star in his rookie year. The only other player able to do that was Yao Ming. Yao Ming. And that's because he's 7'6". Blake Griffin was a force his rookie year. His rookie year won the slam dunk contest, was rookie of the year. Just a force. Let's see if they have a description for it. No, they don't. He averaged 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. You guys are not noticing what he's doing in Detroit? Oh, wait, y'all don't watch a team unless they're Golden State. I forgot. He's the second, or probably the best player, unless you want to say, oh, Andre Drummond's better. He's the best player on a playoff team, which is the Detroit Pistons. Now, they just got a point guard. We'll see what they do. But the Detroit Pistons made the playoffs when no one expected them to. Yeah, it's the East, whatever. Honestly, who expected the Detroit Pistons to go to the playoffs? They have Ish Smith on their team. Blake Griffin was the best player on the team and led them to the playoffs. How long did they last? Not very long, but they went to the playoffs as Blake Griffin being the best player. He's a great player, and he deserves All-NBA second team. And this last decade was his. He had an era. He was the best dunker in the league. He's physical. He's a force of nature. No, we hadn't seen a player like that ever. So Blake Griffin being there is not a surprise to me. Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony was scoring leader, 2011, I want to say, maybe? One of those years in New York. Long day. I can't really think of it off the top of my head. I'm not trying to look it up right now. But a scoring leader, best player on the Knicks by far, dropped 62 in Madison Square Garden within the last decade. Went to the playoffs just to get knocked out by Miami LeBron. So I'm not holding that against him. It's Miami LeBron. Held it down in New York for years with multiple different teams and was able to create a pretty decent team every time. Now, did they ever work out? Did it ever pan out? No, but you can attach that to a lot of things. Attach it to the coaching. You attach that to the teammates he had around him. You attach it to the ownership. Or he has a bad attitude. But if you look at the stats, by these stats, Melo was one of the best players of the last decade. That's not just my Knicks bias. That's just me looking at the numbers. He averaged 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. 8 All-Star selections and 3 All-NBA team selections. Deserves All-NBA second team. Anthony Davis, last pick, easy pick. Has been MVP candidate for the last 4 seasons. Ever since his rookie year, he's been pretty dominant at his position. Been the best power forward in the league for a while now. So, I mean, that's not even an argument. Let's move down to the All-NBA, All-Decade third team. Dwayne Wade deserves to be All-NBA third team. We know this. I don't think he deserves to pass up Chris Paul or Blake Griffin or Carmelo Anthony. Why? Because outside of the 2011, 12, 13 season where he won the championship with Miami, where LeBron was really averaging most points and making sure that they were winning those games, it was the best player on the team by far and had the best series, the best seasons of his career thus far. Best playoff performances thus far that we've seen. Best finals performances thus far that we had seen. I don't think D-Wade deserves that much credit. Yes, he's the second best player. Yes, that and third. But at the same time, I don't edge him out over a lot of people. Only person I could maybe think about edging him out over would probably be somebody like a Russell Westbrook or Carmelo Anthony. But at the same time, what did he do outside of those Miami years in the entire decade? In the span of the decade, that's another thing you have to look at. In the span of the decade, outside of those 2 seasons where he had LeBron on his team, what did he do? In 06 was when the last time he won a ring by himself. And then it was 4 years until the decade started. Outside of those 2 years of the championships, he got injured, he retired, he wasn't very good, he didn't do much with Miami. That's it. He team hopped for a little bit, then retired. That's what he did this decade. Outside of the 2 seasons, his stats weren't that great. That's why he's 13. Not saying all-time better career, he's above Chris Paul or above Carmelo Anthony or above, like, oh, you're not doing it. Of course he is. But if we look at the span of his career, the decade before, All-NBA first team. You know what I mean? The decade before, he's All-NBA first team. Definitely in the starting lineup. But this decade, not so much. Kobe Bryant. Kobe fans saying it's disrespectful that Kobe Bryant is All-NBA third team. He won a ring in 2010 where he was the reason that went to Game 7. And in Game 7, he shot 38%. And Pau Gasol was the only consistent scorer on that team. Pau Gasol deserved that Finals MVP. Without Pau Gasol, they lose every single game because Kobe just could not put the ball in the net when it mattered. Game 6 of that series, I want to say, he shot an enormous amount of free throws. He had Kobe did not carry that team. Kobe won a championship. I understand he got Finals MVP. I understand that. But if you look at the stats, Kobe was the reason that the game were close. He was losing. Every single time he got the ball, he would chuck up the shot, and he was shooting it at a 30% rate, 38%, so 40% clip. That's not all-star numbers. The series wouldn't be close if he could just put the ball in the damn net and have all-star numbers at the finals. That's what I think of that 2010 championship. After that, he had 2 more years of decent play where he got knocked out in the second round. That first year after the championship, second round, he got eliminated in what? 6, I want to say. And the year after, he almost got swept in 5. He lost that series. And then after that, what did he do? Get injured and then retire. Oh, he dropped 16 in a retirement game on 50 shots. So I'm not giving him credit for that. For the majority of the decade, he's either retired or not very good. So that's why he's All-NBA third team. For the time that he was in the NBA during the decade, he averaged 25 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 All-NBA selections in that decade, and 7 All-Star nominations in that decade. That's great. But if we look at the stats, most of the decade, or a good amount of the decade, he was not active. And for almost all of the decade, he wasn't showing up when it mattered. So I understand you guys just love Kobe, yo, Kobe this, Kobe that. But let's look at the stats here. For the decade, he was not the player that you all claimed that he was. Decade before, where he was three-peating and getting a championship in 06 and 07, All-NBA first team. Easy. But this decade, no. He's third team. This decade was a new decade. He retired. He was done. It's not that hard to understand. Giannis deserves to be there. Literally went from being a prospect to an NBA MVP, one of the most dominant players in the league within 3 years. LaMarcus Aldridge deserves to be there. You guys forget what he did in Portland with Damian Lillard. He was a force to be reckoned with. And then it went to Spurs and was still a force to be reckoned with. And it's still a very good power forward in the league today. Does he still need work? Is he getting old? Of course. That's what happens to most players. But his time in Portland, he was that guy. He was that power forward. He's the #1 power forward. So I'm not gonna argue that with him. LaMarcus Aldridge, 21 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, 5 All-NBA selections, 7 All-Star selections, exactly. He had more in the decade than LaMarcus Aldridge, in the decade we're talking about, in selections. He had more All-NBA selections than Kobe and had the same amount of All-Star games. LaMarcus Aldridge. But Kobe deserves to be All-NBA first team, right? Over the fuck who? He's not beating out James Harden. He's not beating out Steph Curry. He's not beating out Chris Paul. And he's not beating out Russell Westbrook. He's just not. No MVPs. Just no. He's not beating them out. I'm sorry to tell you. And you Kobe fans just keep ignoring facts. You just keep ignoring numbers. Now, I'm not going to say I agree with Matt Kellerman and say that Kobe deserves to be on the All-NBA worst or the worst NBA players or whatever he said, even though it was hilarious. But I understand his sentiment that Kobe is not as good as everybody hypes him up to be, especially his fans. His fans will, if you ask them what Kobe is the greatest player of all time, then nobody can ever top him. Even LeBron, no Jordan, nobody. And it's just not true. But outside of that, we will be back next week, and I will drag my co-hosts out here. I will grab them by the neck and make sure they're out here. And please, 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 especially if you made it this far, if I was able to talk to you for this long and keep you intrigued for this long somehow, please, please, please like and subscribe. Comment on the video, tell me your favorite part, or tell me how ugly I am. I like that too. And support us, man. Retweet our shit, like our tweets. Help us out, man. We're trying to make it big, and we need all the support we can. If you have any questions, hit our Twitter at SportsTalk352. Fuck 352 Sports Talk on Twitter. We need our account. And Instagram at 352 Sports Talk. If you have any questions or if you want us to talk about something you want to shout out or something, hit our social medias, man. We're always on them and we're always looking at them. My personal Twitter is at Music by Pharaoh. That's MUSICBYFARO. And that's it. I'm checking out, man. Yeah, stay hydrated, I love y'all.